Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to first let everyone know how to access the manual and a recording of this video, of this webinar. That'll be accessed from our portal, portal.fmssolutions.com. That's the page I'm on right now. You will go to the Applications tab. And here in the list, the library of manuals is the PPACA reporting module manual. You just click on that to open it. And I'll be reviewing this document in its entirety today, going through all the various steps to use the module. And then a recording of this webinar will be on our YouTube website, youtube.com/FMSSolutions. There's a lot of other videos here that I'm sure you'll get some information out of, but we'll post this within a day or so. This webinar will be posted to the YouTube website. So if you ever need to go back for any refresher training or anything, you can do it there. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We'll have time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, go ahead and just type them into the GoToWebinar question and answer thing there, the little box, and then I'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Hopefully by now you've seen the 1094 and 1095 forms. This is what they look like. Let me go into full screen mode here so we can see them. The 1094C is the transmittal page, and the 1095 is the employee page, one for each employee. These tax forms, very similar timing to the W-2s. They have to be filed with the IRS and mailed out to employees by January 1st of the following year. So for tax year 2015, it'll be January 31st of 2016 is when these forms have to be filed and sent to the employees, filed with the IRS and sent to the employees. So the 1094 is just one per EIN. It's just one submittal. This is the transmittal form. So this is where you've got your employer name and address. Part 2 is applicable large employer member information. And you've got some questions here. Are you the authoritative? Is the ALE member, is this a member of an aggregated group? Certifications for eligibility. And then the second page is some questions about minimum essential coverage offered by month, full-time employee counts, total employee counts, aggregated group indicators, and then safe harbor, section 4980, transition relief or safe harbor. Third page is a list of the other members of your ALE group. And this, of course, is if a client has, let's say, one corporation or EIN per store, but the ownership is sort of under a big umbrella where you own maybe 10, you have 10 EINs in a group. Well, the government wants those to be combined when calculating your eligibility for the PPACA. So basically what we're doing here is putting the other corporations, the name and the EIN. I just want to review the forms now just so we can get a look at them, and then I'll talk about how to set them up in FMS. The 1095, go full screen here. This is the employee form that needs to be sent to each employee. Again, these are both available on the IRS website. You just search the form number, 1095C, 1094C. Employee name and address, employer name and address. These three codes are basically your bread and butter of this whole deal. The offer and coverage, the employee share of lowest cost, self-only minimum coverage plan, and then your safe harbor code. So this is where all your tracking, most of your work comes into play, is determining these boxes for all of your employees. And we'll talk about that in detail on the focus side, the application side. And then under covered individuals here, it's important to recognize this is only for self-insured clients. So I'm sure you know whether or not you're self-insured, but if you're not self-insured, your healthcare provider will submit this information to the IRS, so you don't have to. But if you are self-insured, you administrate your own plan, you will have to fill out this information, the covered individuals, the dependents, children, spouse, that kind of thing. And it's just their name, social, date of birth, and then what months were they covered. Only one page for this. The second page would print on the back, theoretically. It's just the instructions for the employer, the employee, so that they can understand what they're looking at when they get this form. So let's go ahead and go into focus, dive into focus here. I'm going to get my screen background as white as I can, and talk about how to set this up in focus. So this webinar is for clients with full menus, as opposed to our abbreviated online in-store menu. That's a separate webinar. We have clients on here that are both accounting services clients, where FMS does a lot of the accounting services and payroll functions for you, and we have clients that are applications clients that just run the application on their own. But the key is here that all the clients in this webinar have full menus. So I'll talk about everything that's set up from full menu point of view. So we put everything under this health insurance reporting menu. We kind of snuck it into the payroll master menu in the middle, and then kind of pushed everything down one step here as far as the other reporting menus, because this was the best place for it. So this is going to house everything regarding data entry and reporting for all the requirements for the PPACA, the 1095, 1094. So we have the client transmittal, that's the 1094. Employee offer and coverage, that's the 1095. A report, kind of a reconciliation report for you to understand what data you have in the system. And a spreadsheet import for both the offer and coverage and the covered individuals to make it easier to get the data into the system. So let's start with the client transmittal form, the 1094. All the data is stored by client and year. So we're not doing the whole year-end menu deal with this. So when you come in and I put a client number in here, it's just going to list out the years of history that we have in here. So this menu and these functions are not available on the year-end menu. They're just going to be available through the main payroll master menu. So this is kind of its own database tables, and so you won't have to go into the year-end menu. Everything is kind of stored here in one place. Okay, so we just can list out each individual year, and we can see the data for that year and report on it. So right away, you can add a new client here. I should say a new year. Let me go into edit. So when you come in and you add a new one, basically we grab all the information, or as much information as we can, from the client table. So the name, EIN, address, you won't have to type that in. You will have to type in the phone number that you want for a contact person, and there's a phone type field. And then down below you see these yes or no flags. So you've got authoritative transmittal, aggregated group member, qualifying offer method, all the different transition reliefs. So we have the corresponding box numbers here to the 1094 form. So you can see box 19, authoritative transmittal. That's what we have here. So it's just a simple yes or no. So when we go to generate this form, it's basically going to have this box checked for you. One thing to keep in mind is we're going to take the stance similar to the way that we generate the 941. We're going to generate a report for this transmittal form that's going to have all the same information, and then essentially you will copy it over to an IRS form like this one, where you can just kind of type everything in. As opposed to the 1095, really quickly, I'm getting sidetracked here, but the 1095 is going to be more like the W-2s, where you'll just hit the print button and it will print the overlay with all the boxes and all the descriptions, and it's going to print all the information just like it would a W-2 or a 1099 for that matter. Okay, so let's hop back over here. So we have all the different box, 19, 20, 21, excuse me, and then 22. It has 4 options. Box 20 is a count, total number of 1095-C forms. So we will obviously be able to count the forms that are being printed, so you don't have to key in that number. And then for the second page of the 1094, we have this monthly info. So I went back to my list of years, and then for this year I can highlight it and click on monthly info. And then for each month, you will choose yes or no for minimum essential coverage, whether or not you are offering minimum essential coverage, and whether or not you are an aggregated group, and whether or not you have Section 98H transition relief. For this particular one, you can F4 prompt. We'll have to get a drop-down icon there, but you can prompt F4 for the 2 values that are applicable here from the IRS, either your transition relief 50 to 99 or 100 or more relief. So you can select those for each month. And essentially that just populates this form as to which of these boxes are checked, which under column D here, which are checked, and then column E is your transition relief. B and C are counts, so again, we'll be able to count your full-time employees and your total employees, so you won't have to key in that information. We'll be able to count that. And then for the third page, if I go back into Edit and under Add Group, this is a screen where you will basically select all of the other clients, or EINs I should say, that are in your group. Okay, so you can just highlight them and hit select. And then that essentially it takes this client number 99 and associates it with client 457. Or if I hit select here, it's associated with client 87. So when we go to generate the third page, we will have the name and the EINs. So it's pretty self-explanatory as far as the 1094 goes. And theoretically, if you wanted to just, generate this information on your own, your counts, by all means, you can just fill out this form on your own and not have to go through all this information in Focus because it's a pretty simple form. The power from this database point of view is on the 1095. So let's go over the employee offering coverage and covered individuals database. So when I come into the employee offering coverage, again, everything is organized here by client and year. So I'll enter a client, or if I'm locked into a client, it won't prompt me. And then it defaults to the current year, and you can, of course, change that. So now I get a list of employees. It says, okay, here's the employees that you want to work with. So I can, of course, filter this list by employee number. I can sort it by employee name if I wanted to here. I can sort by employee name, sort by store and department. And then there's some powerful fields over here where you can sort by the E is offering coverage, or E for employee offering coverage, records. So this is going to give you a yes or no if you have at least one offering coverage record for this employee. So I could obviously easily filter and say, okay, show me everyone that doesn't have an offering coverage record. And then the next column is I for covered individuals. So I can say, okay, show me everyone that has covered individuals, and I can just work with those employees. And then, of course, AI is active, inactive employees. Okay, so you can filter this list however you choose to get the data, work with the employees that you need to work with. So we have a quick shortcut to the employee display. If you want to just, okay, show me something about the employee real quick. I just want to see the employment information. You can go in and quickly kind of shortcut jump over to any of the employee demographics screens. Otherwise, you can see here offering coverage and covered individuals. So I'll just highlight the employee I want to work with, click on offering coverage records. So what we do here is we're listing the offering coverage records that we have stored for this employee. Okay, so you can see I have a record here for this employee. I can add another record if I need to, or I can edit or delete this record. So if I come in and highlight it and hit edit, it's pretty simple, straightforward information. Basically exactly what we're looking at on the 1095. Oops, 1095. We've got box 14, 15, and 16 that I was referring to earlier. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Offer of coverage, the employee share of lowest cost monthly premium for self-only minimum value coverage, essentially your bronze plan, I like to call it, and then your applicable safe harbor codes. These are all sort of by month, or if the employee was the same for all months, this first column here would be keyed in. Okay, let me switch back to focus. So basically what we're doing here is giving you the ability to just enter a range of months. So if, for example, this employee had the same offer and coverage record for the entire year, I can just enter one record. I can put 1 January to December. The offer code was 1A. The employee share is not required here. I believe in the instructions. Let me zoom out. On the second page, under the instructions, it tells you right here it's only applicable for codes 1B, 1C, 1D, and 1E. That is line 15. So I don't need that there. And then this employee, let's say, didn't have any safe harbor, so I'm just going to blank that out. And then we do want you to check the box of whether or not they were full-time. So obviously, if they were full-time for part of the year, you could create a record for half the year and then check the box, and then do the other half of the year without checking the box. So this just makes it simple for the 1094, where we're totaling the number of full-time employees by month. We're just going to come back to this database here and look at this full-time employee indicator. So I hit OK and confirm, and it saves the record. So of course, I can create employees with multiple records. So let me go in to look at a different employee. If, for example, they had any of these, box 14, 15, 16 are full-time, if any of those values change, then I want to create a new record. So I can create any number, an unlimited number of records. Well, I should say unlimited. There's really only 12 because you've got one for each month. So you can have basically one record for each month, or you can create one record for a range of months if you want to. So you just, again, kind of come in here. I can double-click to edit, and I can change any of this information. I can highlight and delete, obviously delete these records. Anything I need to do to come in here and just change this information. Okay, so let me go into covered individuals. Pretty much the same structure. Highlight the employee. I work with covered individuals. Now we're listing the covered individuals. So I can obviously add new ones, display, edit, and delete them. So if I want to go into edit, basically we're just requiring the same information. Go back up. Has the 1095, the name, social, date of birth, and then the months in which they were covered. So that's name, social, date of birth, and months in which they were covered. So we just give you a simple yes or no flag here instead of a range of months. So two ways basically for you to enter the offer and coverage and then the covered individuals. Okay, let me talk about the report. So we've got the data in. I'll talk about spreadsheet importing after the report. So we've got some data in there. We want to basically run a report that says, okay, show me what I've got in the database. Pretty simple, straightforward report. It is kind of, in my opinion, a reconciliation report because obviously you have to print 1095s for anyone that was full-time at any time for any month during the year. Okay, so it is just full-timers and anyone that was full-time at any month during the year. So when you run this report, you're going to be able to get an idea from a listing of who has offer and coverage records. Okay, so basically just enter a range of clients and the year. We can also print the dependents or the covered individuals if you want to, or if you're not worried about that part, just leave it unchecked. And then your as of month is basically a way for you to say, okay, just verify up to June, let's say. So if maybe throughout the year, you can run this report and we're going to tell you, okay, here's a full-time employee that doesn't have offer and coverage records. You're going to want to look at this employee and we're going to print a message for you. And so basically, if you're running it in the middle of the year, you only have the data through June. You want to put in month number 6 here, and then that'll tell the program not to look at any month after that and print warning messages. Okay, so you're going to say, just show me everything as of June. Don't give me an error message if I'm missing records for anything past June. Okay, and so there, when we run the report, it looks like this. So essentially, we're just listing the employees. The first 2 employees have records here. And then we just list the month and the 3 boxes, 14, 15, and 16, and then what the values were there. So this first employee, it says offer and coverage month missing. So if I look right down for each month, I've got everything through November, and okay, here, December, I'm missing a month. So of course, that's why it's printing the error message there, okay? Because when I ran it, I said as of blank, which means the whole year, all right? And then down the next employee, similar thing. I've got all the offer and coverage records, so I've got no error message here. And then I've got dependent information down here. So we're just listing the dependent, name, date of birth. We're not worried about the Social Security on this report. And then the month in which they were covered. And then down under here, we're listing other employees that we believe should have offer and coverage records that do not. Okay, so it will print those messages for you if you have employees that again, up to your as of month if they don't have offer and coverage records. We're obviously not going to verify that you have dependents because, of course, employees may not have any. So we're not really validating any of the covered individuals, just the offer and coverage records. Okay, moving right along, we've talked about pretty much everything that for you to get into the system. And so let me talk about spreadsheet imports. So if I go back here, we've got 2 of the spreadsheet imports. So let me talk about the spreadsheets first before we talk about importing them. So I'll start with the offer and coverage records. Pretty straightforward as far as the fields go. There's not many fields in the spreadsheet here. We're looking for the client number, the year, employee number, your begin and end month, box 14, 15, 16, and full-time indicator. So exactly the same as what you see on the screen when you go into the offer and coverage record for the employee. Same exact fields. So basically, what you're doing here is just loading up those data tables. What I did here is is what I'm doing here is I've got a spreadsheet for each month. So this is one suggestion was essentially to load these a spreadsheet for each month, or essentially, you know, obviously you're tracking this by month, and one easy method to keep track of this whole thing is basically to create yourself a template spreadsheet for each month, list out all of your employees employed in that month, and then calculate the offer and coverage for each employee. So you can see my begin and end month here is both January. So essentially I would have 12 records for every employee. And this is just one way for me to say, okay, end of month, I'm going to go ahead and calculate my offer and coverage. However, you know, every client is different. Every client's going to do that differently. And your end result here is to get a spreadsheet formatted in this method. So client number, year, and then all the associated employee information. And then let me talk about the covered individual spreadsheet. Very similar layout, client, year, employee ID, and then CI, covered individual, social security number, last name, first name, middle initial, date of birth, and then just yes, no flags for each month in which they were covered. Okay, and then obviously this is very similar process to the employer share of healthcare that we rolled out a few years ago, where you're essentially just getting your spreadsheet formatted in this method, do save as, and then save as type CSV, comma delimited, and you can see I already have those files here. So let me go ahead and open one of those up, just in a text editor, so we can see what they look like once they're in CSV format. So if you have a text editor, I use TextPad. It's a free trial version, and then they have, you know, Notepad that comes on Windows will be able to open text files like this, CSV. And you can see that I included the header. We'll ignore that if you do include it. And then here are my data records, just formatted very simply with a comma separating each field. Okay. So you would do that for each of those files, covered individuals and the offer and coverage. And then you will transfer it up to the IBM server. I can send out these data transfers to the attendees. But essentially, you know, you browse your PC to find your CSV file, put in the FMS server IP address, and then your library, FCS PDTA, and then your initials of your environment. And our prefix for this file, we love our file name prefixes here at FMS. The file name prefix for the offer and coverage is OCE, and then you can put more digits on there, for example, the client number, to fill out the file name. So my file name here is OCE9999 for a client number. Transfer that data up to the server. I'm not actually going to run it here, but I'll just step you through it. And then I go into the spreadsheet import for offer and coverage. We are just loading one client at a time, unfortunately, for those that have multiple clients that they need to import. And that's for validation purposes. We want to just keep everything clean so that we can just validate. We're not trying to validate across clients or anything like that. It makes the program more efficient to just validate the information in the file one client at a time. I enter the file name exactly from the data transfer, so I can even just copy everything in front of the / and paste it in there. And then similar again to the employer share of healthcare upload, we're doing this employee number or social security number, and then your propose or update mode. So your employee number or social security number is back on your spreadsheet. We're asking you, what is this value, this employee identification number? You can either use the FMS payroll employee number or the social security number. And then when you go to run the program, you just indicate what value you have there for us to find the employee. And then, of course, proposed mode or update mode. Proposed mode will just run you a report that tells you, okay, based on the data you're giving me, here's what I can do with it. Here's the errors, and here's the accepted employees. When you run it in proposed mode, we do not delete the file. So theoretically, you run it in proposed mode, you don't have any errors, and then you just run the update mode immediately after to update the database. Otherwise, you can, on the data transfer, if you get errors and you need to upload a new file and you have not run the update mode, you just want to replace the file using the data transfer, and that's under details. This create object here is off the bat, it's yes, create file and member. You would say no, replace member, and that means overlay the file, that same file name that I'm giving you. You want to say overwrite that file. It already exists, so I'm going to replace it. And then just hit data transfer again, and it will replace the file. Okay, so I run this import program, and we're going to get two reports. Okay, basically we just split the reports to very easily identify employees that are accepted, employees that are rejected. So those are the two reports, accepted and rejected. So essentially, this is what your accepted report looks like. It's just going to list the records, the client, the social, or the employee number, name, the month range, all your box 14, 15, 16, full-time. And of course, you won't actually have any error messages. However, on the rejected report, it's just going to list who's been rejected. So you don't have to sort through a 100-page report to look for 2 employees that have been rejected. We're just going to split them out on a separate report for you so you can see them very easily. So you can see we're doing a lot of different validation when we go to import records. We want to make sure that the employee exists. We want to make sure the data that you're giving us is applicable to the IRS form. So for example, there's no month number 13, it's telling me here. We're going to check that you're giving us the correct offer and coverage, I should say box 14 and 16 codes. We're going to make sure that you're giving us only a yes or a no on the full-time indicator. Your amount has a decimal point and decimal places, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to validate all of the information that you're giving us, of course, so we're not importing any garbage data. So you will get any error messages that come up. Same thing for the covered individuals. It's just going to, there's not a whole lot of validation, really just that you're giving us all the required information and you're giving us a yes or a no for those individual months. So that's the reporting, the ACA reporting module in a nutshell here. Let me go back. Okay. So obviously right now we don't yet have the forms, the output forms developed. That is because we're waiting for the IRS to confirm, even though they've published the 1094, 1095 forms, what we're waiting for, especially on the 1095, is instructions on essentially how we can format this to better suit the hundreds of thousands of forms that FMS prints, for example, and you guys, having thousands of employees, really revolves around, can we do a sealer version of this form? We don't know yet is the answer. We're waiting on some specifics from the IRS. Obviously, you can download a W-2 from the IRS. It doesn't look anything like the sealer W-2s that the FMS prints. All the information is there, same boxes, same box numbers. All the information is there. It's just in a different format. So we're just waiting to confirm that we can do that on a form like the 1095-C, so that clients don't have to be stuffing thousands of these forms into envelopes, which is currently what the IRS is expecting us to do when we go to mail it to the employees. So in the second half of the year here, as soon as we can, essentially, we'll be developing these forms, and of course we'll put them on this menu right underneath it here to go ahead and generate these forms for clients to print, or of course FMS will offer services to print these forms for you. And then also electronic files. The IRS is in the process of determining file formats for electronic reporting files. So again, similar to the W-2s, there will be an electronic version of the 1095 where instead of mailing paper forms to the IRS, and it will be mandatory for 250 or more employees, clients with 250 more employees, you will have to generate an electronic version of the file and submit it to the IRS. We are still waiting on instructions from the IRS to format the file, so again, as soon as we get that, we will have another button here to generate electronic files that get submitted to the IRS. So that's it as far as the reporting module goes. Let me switch over. I don't see any questions from anyone. So hopefully I've answered all of your questions. I'm sure you'll think of some immediately after the conclusion here. So of course, you can email me or the help desk. We'd also love suggestions here. So if you can think of ways for us to improve this, more validation or checking, verification, whatever you can think of, we would love to hear, get some feedback on this module and how we can better suit your needs. So again, as I stated earlier, the manual is up on the portal on the Applications tab. You'll be able to view this presentation on YouTube, and then please submit any questions that you have to myself or the help desk. That concludes our presentation, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll definitely assist you as soon as we can in as much as we can in getting these forms reported to the IRS. Thank you very much. Have a good day.